Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a single military operation that has, put the entire system of global rules on trial. We're going to use the source material to get right to the heart of an event that really challenges the very foundation of international law.
So let's start with a big question, one that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a political thriller. But this isn't some theoretical debate about power. No, this is a real-world scenario, and its consequences ripple out across the entire globe.
Because, believe it or not, this just happened. In a pretty stunning move, U.S. forces launched a military operation that ended with the arrest of Venezuela's president on Venezuelan territory. An event like that, as you can imagine, has sent some major shockwaves through the global system, and today we're going to break down exactly why.
All right, let's get into it. First, we'll look at the operation itself. Then we're going to unpack the huge legal debate at the center of it all. Is this war or is it law enforcement? After that, we'll trace the ripple effects around the world, figure out how the system got to a point where this could even happen, and finally, we'll explore what it might take to actually fix the rules.
Okay, so first things first. What was the official story here? What was the rationale behind an action that is, to put it mildly, unprecedented? Why did the U.S. feel it had to take such a drastic step?
Well, the official justification is really a few different things all rolled into one. Geopolitically, it's about dusting off the old Monroe Doctrine, or Donroe in this case, to push back against rivals like Russia and China in their backyard. Economically, well, it's about getting some influence over the world's largest oil reserves. And then there's the legal angle, which is absolutely crucial. The U.S. is framing this not as a war, but as a law enforcement action to prosecute Venezuelan officials on narco-terrorism charges.
And that right there brings us to the absolute heart of the matter. Is this an act of war, or is it a new kind of global policing? Because depending on how you answer that question, you change the entire game. And who you ask will give you two wildly different answers.
What's so fascinating is how you can look at the same event through two completely different legal lenses. On one side, the U.S. argues this is just a police action. They're pointing to Article 51 of the UN Charter, the right to self-defense, and basically saying the flow of drugs is a kind of armed attack. But on the other side, critics are calling this a clear act of war. They point to a different rule in the same charter, Article 2.4, which says you absolutely cannot violate another country's territory. For them, this isn't law. It's the law of the jungle, where might makes right.
And you've got to understand, this isn't just a U.S.-Venezuela thing. This action sets a precedent that has countries all across the global south really worried. I mean, these are nations that rely on international law to protect them from the whims of superpowers. If this can happen to Venezuela, they're asking, well, who's next?
And let's be real. Underneath all the legal jargon, there's a number. A huge number. 303 billion barrels. That is the largest proven oil reserve on the entire planet. And whoever controls that, well, they control a huge piece of the global energy puzzle, giving them immense leverage over markets and prices.
Just take a look at India. For a country like them, this is a real mixed bag. On the plus side, there's a massive opportunity. India's refineries are actually built for Venezuela's type of crude oil, and a friendlier government there could unlock billions in what they call zombie assets, investments that have been frozen for years. But then there's the flip side. It forces them to walk this diplomatic tightrope. How do you stay on good terms with the U.S. while also defending the very idea of sovereignty that protects you too? So that anxiety you see in places like India, it's not just about this one operation. It's really a symptom of a much, much deeper problem. The global institutions that were built to stop exactly this kind of thing from happening, like the United Nations, are showing some serious cracks.
And one of the biggest reasons why is something a lot of people call the veto trap. You see, the UN Security Council, the group that's supposed to be the world's peacekeeper, is basically paralyzed by its own rules. And this chart, it really says it all. Get this. In just the last decade, 47 vetoes have been used. That's because any one of the 5 permanent members can just say, nope, and shut everything down. It allows them to shield themselves or their allies from any real accountability. The system isn't just broken. You could argue it's designed for deadlock.
On top of that, the rulebook itself is just outdated. Think about it. The UN Charter was designed for a world of tank invasions, for World War II-style conflicts. But today's conflicts are way sneakier. We're talking about gray zone aggression, things like cyber attacks or using private military companies to do your dirty work. They can cripple a country without ever formally declaring war.
So you've got this perfect storm, right? It's not just the veto.
The UN is being starved of cash, over $5 billion in unpaid dues, which basically kneecaps its ability to do anything. Meanwhile, you've got regional groups just going ahead and doing their own thing without UN approval. And like we've seen, powerful countries are getting really good at using legal loopholes and new kinds of warfare, creating this huge accountability vacuum.
Okay, so that all sounds pretty bleak, but is the system a total lost cause? Is there a way to fix it? Let's look at what can actually be done.
All right, so here's a 5-step playbook that experts are talking about. First up, strengthen the law. Close that law enforcement loophole we've been talking about so you can't just call it an invasion of police action. Number 2, you've got to fix the Security Council, maybe with a way to override a veto in extreme cases. Third, use economic leverage. If you want to trade, you've got to play by the rules. Fourth, write new rules for new threats like cyber warfare. And finally, use technology to create radical transparency. Basically, use tech so there's nowhere to hide.
And that really brings us to the bottom line here. This whole situation is more than just about Venezuela. It's a massive stress test for the entire global order. And it forces us to ask a really fundamental question about the kind of world we want to live in. Is it going to be one governed by rules, where everyone has some protection? Or is it going to be a world where the most powerful just get to make the rules up as they go? Because right now, that's what's on the line.